Welcome to the Heart of Tradition podcast. We're going to talk about weight loss today, how to maintain your body not according to super ultra thin, like emaciated fashion magazines, but how to do it, without having these spare tire kind of outgrowth, strange shapes. Um, Challenges to the endocrine system, etc., which create kind of a different shaped body than what we're looking for. Almost abnormally shaped. I've noticed much more of these shapes since I've come home from France after 15 years there. We're much more further down along this path of endocrine disruption, and there's even different shapes and forms that shapes of the head, shapes of the face, shapes of different type of in between gender type of things. There's been a lot of things I've seen since I've come back that I'm like, whoa, I never saw this in Paris. I never saw this in France. I never saw this body shape. I never saw this type of facial, I just never saw it. And there's always something a little obtuse about it. It's not something that's just random cultural differences. It's something to do with what we're eating, and then whatever other toxins are going on. So the best way to lose weight and to have the right weight, let's say for example, I'm have more of not a Viking type of composition, but I'm more stocky, strong, I guess you could say, and so I have girth actually. I have a lot more girth than I had when I was younger, but at no point does the girth, spare tire out or have this kind of extra thing there. It's I have a gut and I also have this girth, but it's all kind of in line, I guess you could say. Even though it's a little thicker, it's still all in line. And to be honest with you, I probably could have maintained more of a smaller figure before I had thyroid issues that were caused by many things, but one of which was the European air and things that were in the air leading all the way back to Chernobyl, which a lot of people will doubt. But if you ever study Chernobyl, almost anyone will tell you that those isotopes that are in the air, they never go away. They're there for thousands of years, and so you can pick them up, and you don't need much. Of course, this stuff is very powerful at small doses. And so I think me being over there did help contribute to some of the thyroid deficiency, not only for me, but, the thyroid medication is one of the biggest medications in France. So it's not just me. And I'm sure that there's other countries closer, that also were affected. So, so that's one angle. Of course, water, the air, the food supply, there's many vaccines, medicines, there's many things we can do which can kind of put us off down the wrong path with the body and the shape and everything else, especially deficiencies. If you ever study Weston Price, he definitely noted that the vitamin K2, the animal form, not the plant form, but if you have nothing else, of course, the plant form is better than nothing, but the active animal form contributed to these wider facial structures and more space, not having the crooked teeth, everything all jammed in there because of a lack of proper mineral diffusion or lack of minerals in general, which is creating deficiencies in the bone structure, and then that's creating a cramped kind of space in the mouth. A cramped space in the mouth is also symbolic of a cramped space down onto the pelvic area. So there's a connection between the mouth and the pelvis as far as the anatomy and the bone structure. It doesn't mean that it's an exact parallel, but there's always a mirroring there between those two structures that can be followed. And so, yes, the sugar century probably plays into some of it. The sugar century of us eating more and more sugar and less butter or, healthy traditional fats and eating more sugar, because this creates mineral imbalances which are buffered by stealing minerals from the bone structure, and teeth, etc. So we steal the minerals, the body steals the minerals from the bone structure in order to buffer a lot of the sugar deficiencies that are happening there. So, and then that creates, a weaker bone structure, jawline, teeth, the whole thing starts to break down. So that's why America, unlike the rest of the world, is probably the most cavity, most dental procedure per capita than anywhere else in the world, and probably by far. Even just being in Europe, you still find people that haven't gone to the dentist very often. I'm not saying it's all better or worse. I'm just saying in America, that's impossible. Like everybody's just been worked on, drilled on, and everything. So once the drilling starts and the cavity situations start and the root canals or the pulled teeth or any of these things start, well, then there's been what you could call interception. And so bacteria can harbor in these areas for life after that, depending on how the operations were done and everything. So a lot of people are starting to become aware of that. Root canals are becoming kind of a bad word in dentistry, at least in certain pockets, which are increasing. So we're starting to realize that, like Weston Price said, sometimes when the society moves down the wrong road as far as sugar and everything else, well, sometimes the only thing you can do to stave off going too far down that road is just you have to sacrifice the tooth that you lost and not drill a root canal into it. It's a sacrifice because it may not be any other intervention, may be worse. And so there's this notion of loss, and I think a lot of us don't agree with that, so we just fix it all and try to stick some more stuff in there and drill some more holes and get some other things happening. But there's consequences to all of that. I'm not saying everybody has to just be toothless. There can be many very modern technological advances which help us to build crowns or bridges or porcelain or whatever we need to have a mouth that works for us, but there is this notion of sacrifice alongside of that, sadly. But so anyway, so that's just one little side note on that. But as far as weight loss goes, that's going to play a key role. Well, sugar is going to play a key role there too. A lot of us know about the low carb kind of movement. The problem with that movement, if it's just called low carb, is it's all about the quality of the carbs. And so, just having like some white potato or white rice or whatever is totally different than having a mini organic, preferably sourced with multiple certifications on it. No GMO, this, that, and the others. Farmers market, talk to them, ask them what was used, and because sometimes they won't use pesticides, but they'll use herbicides to clear the land beforehand. And so there's all this stuff that's just in different regulation pockets that we don't pick up on as a general consumer. So the better you get these like little small, high, lot of skin per sugar surface area, these smaller potatoes, fingerlings and stuff like that. And then you cook these with some butter and olive oil and kind of fry them up, and you even bring some of the vitamins in the skin even to a more available level through this process. And then you also slow the carb down. You allow it to not spike the blood sugar. So all of these things are little small things, but compare that to like a big baked potato with no butter that you eat all of, and then it spikes the blood sugar. Even in that little small world right there, we have huge differences, of what we can do with the same food. So that's why just a book about, here, eat this and eat that, it's not going to work. It's very detailed. And so once we start paying attention to how everything counts, to quote Depeche Mode, everything counts in large amounts. Like every little thing that we're doing is so important. I mean, at first it is because we have to understand it, but not in the long term because we start to get it. Once we start getting how this whole thing works, we start just paying attention in a general way, and then we're good. But until we get to that point, we're kind of sleeping, and we're just like, nah, it's cool. I'm adding a little thing here. I'm doing my thing. And so anyway, a lot of these people that I see doing the keto for loss, weight loss and everything, the problem is, once again, the fats. They don't have the right healthy fats. They've also usually tried to forego healthy breads because they can't find them. They don't understand what's broken in the bread, and so they replace it with these non-gluten type of breads, and then those don't have a stable constancy of the energy supply. For people who are more awake, if you're more awake, you can feel that energy supply and its lack of constancy. But if you're like on coffee and stimulants and working out and you're always moving and you've got this kind of ecstatic thing going on, then it's quite possible that you won't pick up on this constancy, but it's there. And so we have to find the right breads. I usually recommend like rye, which is like made with the stone mill, made with liquid sourdough, heirloom rye, and maybe Polish, or you can actually import this sourdough in Whole Foods in these little squares. Usually it's from Westphalia. It usually has a Jewish star on it. There's only one. There's not only one brand in the world, but there's only one that's available on a wide scale that I've found in Whole Foods. It's the blue one. And all the other ones that are packaged exactly like it, these square breads and pumpernickels and whatever they're labeled, do not do it. The only one that does it is this one. And the one is because they use a 20-hour cooking method. And so that method is replaced by beet syrup and malt and all sorts of stuff to make it brown like that, to make it look like it browned, and they look like they spent the time to cook it, and they didn't. And so this is a way to get the right bread. And this is going to be important too, because if you can get the right bread, it's going to help you with the weight, because you can, weight is also easily controlled by measuring things at first to get like a feel for what you're doing. And so these breads, because they're perfectly sliced and you can eat just like one in the morning and maybe a half of one like with another meal kind of thing per day, you have a very easy way to control what you're doing. And if you do that for a while, you'll realize that that control also plays a part into the healing or the weight loss as far as carbs and everything else. But it's not just about carbs or no carbs, you see, because these carbs are high fiber, high vitamin E. There's a lot going on there. High magnesium which has been cooked for 20 hours, so that metal has become assimilatable. There's like a whole world of wisdom in this. And so if you get that right bread, boom, you got that. Okay, so basically focus on all the basics and get those right. If you can get eggs, milk, bread, butter, salt, and a couple proteins right, then you can pull off a lot. So I'm going to tell you how to do that. And then have you test it. You can go test this and you'll see what it does for the body. Now don't expect results overnight, but these are life practices, and as they're put in place, the body will start to stay in its same shape as far as like the normal shape, or it will work its way towards that, because we're detoxifying. Sport and basketball and all these other things and hiking or whatever you need to do, this is all part of it. You don't want to take in more than you're putting out, input and output kind of thing. That's kind of logical. So, but that doesn't mean that when you're eating less because you're not doing any work or you're not manually doing anything or you're not exercising as much, it doesn't mean that you need to pull off fat and all these things. You can keep the proportions as the way our ancestors had them, with high fat and decent amount of protein, and then, the veggies and a little bit of sauerkraut, maybe a little bit of things that can little ferment, and has a little bit of carbs, like a handful, and salad, of course, so some sort of green salad there, but something like that, and measured out to a certain degree, just at first to get things moving. Sometimes 10 grams over can be what's throwing you off, and it's just to start, because once these things are set up right, you don't have to be so anal about it. It's just at the beginning, it helps you to shape your training. And then after that, you'll be able to let go and not be so tight. It's like going through the eye of the needle. And once you're out, you start to understand how it works. It's okay. So the bread, there, we got that covered. And those can also be ordered online in packs of 12. They last forever. I mean, like, not forever, but you can store them for up to a year. I mean, they're really amazing. And then you can just use half of the pack and then stick the other half in the fridge and finish off the pack. That way you're getting some of the vitamins out of the fridge, because fridges are not harmless. They can harm vitamins too. So you get half the vitamins while it's outside the fridge and then the other half while it's in the fridge. And so these little methods will help you keep the vitamin E intact and keep these things at a living level, and not just throwing things straight into the fridge thinking, oh, the fridge is going to protect it. No. There's a lot of things that we need to also eat when we can, and get those vitamins as fresh as we can. That's one of the biggest dilemmas in the American food system, is freshness of the vitamins getting all the way to the person and delivered in the body. That's a difficult challenge. A lot of the good proteins that I've found here, like red meats, they're all frozen. And so, I've found stuff that's not frozen, but I haven't found a good quality of stuff that's not frozen, especially in the red meat. It's okay, it'll work, but I'm just saying we've lost something. And so it's all about getting that maximum amount of vitality to you, and that's going to equal out the health as well. So it's not mysterious. It's all about energy health, and that animal converts that energy, and you get to take that energy depending on how much of it's retained by the time you eat it. Otherwise, it just turns into some fibers and a few other things and maybe a little bit of material. But anyway, one other thing is we can also get too stuck in some of these foods. Like, if I just eat hamburgers all the time or whatever, then I'm not going to have the skin or the cartilage or the organs or a lot of other areas that need to be eaten as well to help with the body. Like over time, if we just eat chicken breast, you start to have deficiencies because you're supposed to eat the chicken and the skin, and you're supposed to even eat those chewy cartilage parts on the end of the bone. I mean, hanging out in France, I learned that. My girlfriend was Spanish at the time, and they always eat all of that at dinner. I never touched it because it was too chewy, but no, now I do, so I learned. Broth will also pull some of that stuff out too. So anyway, that's the other way. That's kind of like a healthy workaround for all of it, but at the same time, it's okay to get these things in a few different states if you can. So we got the bread, now the eggs. So the eggs are all polluted in America, pretty much 99%. So the only eggs you're going to find that are any good here are probably corn-free, soy-free, but even that's not enough, okay? Because there's even corn-free and soy-free that are based out of CAFO, like concentration farms where there's no sunlight. They have no sunlight exposure. And then that means the vitamin D is completely void in those eggs, no matter what their color is. So corn-free and soy-free can be one of the key words, especially soy-free, but it needs to also be outdoors. So sometimes you have to call people, and typically they're going to be more expensive. They might be up to $1 an egg, but in your first reaction is, oh, I'm not paying that. But look, if you got to spend $24 for a month worth of eggs and have some decent protein, that's actually the cheapest amount that you're going to spend in the protein category. So it's okay to spend more here. It's like, don't be stupid. On salt, butter, bread, in these categories, spend as much as you can because they're commodity items. They're the most in demand, and you can find them at cheaper prices. So that's where you want to spend the money. So salt, for example, Celtic sea salt, gray, humid, which cakes up. That's what you want. You want to start using that. If you can find it chopped into smaller units, or you get a grinder, which will do that for you. But you buy it in this clumpy kind of wet grayish color, high iodine. It says no iodine because they didn't put iodide in there. So they're trying to let you know that you can't replace iodide salt, whatever. But the truth is there's more iodine in this salt. There isn't any iodine in traditional salt, even when they add iodine, because it's not iodine, it's iodide, and it's a radioactive form of it. So what you need is just natural salt, Celtic sea salt. Don't get the stuff from Himalayas or whatever that is. None of that stuff is any good. It's all high sodium. So you want a salt that has a high magnesium content, that's wet, and it has, therefore, a volatile, an iodine content to it. So it's fresh, I guess you could say. So that's what you want. It costs you a little more, but it's not that expensive. So that's where you want to spend it right. And you'll realize by eating it that your brain is like going, wow, this is what I needed. There was something I needed here. It does help with the development of the brain, digestion, aldosterone, kidney function. There's a lot of things. It's not just bad for the kidneys, like people say. The kidney also uses salt as part of its function, and even as part of the creation of aldosterone. I'm not saying you need to drink salt. I'm just saying that, you get the right one. And avoid some of the other salt, which is pretty much everywhere. Even when you buy smoked salmon, they've injected all this high sodium salt into it. So everywhere we go, we find some stuff. And so we have to kind of just be on the watch. And it's okay to have salmon, wild salmon especially, but you don't want to just eat salted foods all the time. And you want to use the right salt when you can. So keep that one. And then the other key is going to be meat. So red meat in America is very hard to find. I've only found one, or there's a couple I've found. You can order from some farms in different states, depending on where you live. California is one of the roughest places to get good food, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like that, but it is, because everything is so, pricier and frozen. And, I've found illegal, like foie gras and some of these things. So there's a lot of food blockage here, which a lot of states, unless you live in another state, which I have, you wouldn't know the difference. But as I do this research, I know there's a big difference. So we have that. We also have, if you could get duck eggs or chicken eggs that are coming from these soy-free, corn-free, a little bit more expensive, maybe $8, $9 a dozen minimum. And you need to pay that because otherwise it's hard to overcome the price point of the standard feed that most people use when they have chickens. They raise chickens. Most people are doing things in a very offhand way because they just, oh, I don't know how to give them their vitamin mix, so I'll just stick that in there and just do it like the USDA tells me, and this will give them their vitamins, and then they don't realize that there's glyphosate corn in there or glyphosate something else or soy oil or something else mixed in there just to bulk them up or whatever it is, or even canola pulp or something that seems even more innocent. That's written on there, and so we get in trouble by following this way. So find the right eggs. You'll probably have to order online through farms by typing those keywords, the corn-free, soy-free, and stuff, unless you can find them locally. Those are going to be a huge step forward. Good eggs, you can build health off of eggs if you have good ones. And if you don't, then you have all this soy coming into your body because they feed all those chickens a lot of soy and corn and possibly OGM. And they found glyphosate in so many things now from organic on down that, you just want to get outside of that because these aren't going to help you with weight loss. And choline helps break down the fats in the body, and the iodine as well. That you can find in some of the foods we're going to name further on. Like these things are all needed to get the fats to move properly and to detoxify the tissues. A lot of toxins are stored in the fat, so if you want to get rid of those fats, this toxins also must go out with them. Maybe I'll finish with the meat, but the meat that we need to get. I usually just use lamb imported from New Zealand. Sometimes I find elk that's frozen imported from New Zealand. I find fresh lamb that's imported from New Zealand, even at Trader Joe's and stuff like that. So this is kind of the food of choice. I use like some herb de Provence as seasoning in order to kind of like make it seem more like meat than lamb if you kind of season it up. I think the French use sage or whatever, but so you have to kind of trick it out. But lamb is pretty much the go-to in general for all your meat, and just stay away from steak and all that stuff unless you can find, like I found one brand which is from New Zealand, which is fresh in one of the stores in California that very rare. I mean, this is like the top of the top in California, this chain, and that's the only reason it's able to find it there. I haven't been able to find this anywhere else. And so they have the best steak, non-super marbly, crazy, whatever we call that in America, just like red, blood red, amazing steak, I stay away from all that super marbly stuff. I don't get that. I got used to eating steaks in France and Europe, and they're more red, and that's why you eat the steak, is for the red. If I want the fat, I'll eat some other part of the animal, or I'll go another route. So this is important. The redness is that testosterone building, muscle converting chemical that you need to help with the weight as well. It helps convert. Like testosterone is important. So you want the red, and so I guess you can get it through there. Maybe also some tartare if you know how to eat some raw meat every once in a while, like the French do. This can help too to get that vitamins in there, along with B6, not B6 that they have in these charts you read on vegetarian sources, which don't do much of anything. But you need the active sources of B6, which are in animal foods, like raw animal foods, especially like sushi and stuff like that. Problem is, a lot of those places that freeze their sushi before you ever eat it. So if you really want that vitamin in full power, you need to make sushi at home yourself. So it's technically you're going to have to make almost everything at home yourself, and then you can kind of let go when you go out every so often and stuff like that with your friends. I mean, not let go, but you can still order normal things, but you can just kind of stay away from, you're just going to build consciousness. So that's the red meat thing. We got the bread thing. We got the eggs thing. We got the salt thing. The milk is also important because the milk can help give you the iodine. Milk stores iodine. It concentrates it. Now, you also have seafoods and things like that, which are amazing too. So that'll also be in there. And they're usually not as affected by a lot of this other stuff because they're from the sea. So the milk is important. I found one milk, like, it's strange about milk. It's not even technically raw milk is the best, right? And technically Jersey milk is probably going to be the best too. But because it's an A2 milk, which means it's easier to digest. The A2 strain comes in from more rustic cattle being breeded than just breeding in some more industrial cattle all the time, the Holstein. So the A2 milks come a lot from Jersey. It's not a guarantee that they're A2 if they're from Jersey, but in general, this is where the direction. And so, but even with good milks in California, especially in the Southern California, like Sacramento, there's a lot of milk coming from around there. But the problem is the climate. The climate's not cold enough to give you fatty enough milk and iodine-rich milk, like to store in that same fat. Iodine stores in that fat. And so in order to get that concentrated, you got to go to the north peak of California where this one company does the milk, and stuff from the colder climates, like almost like a Scottish climate up there. This milk that I drink is amazing. I mean, it tastes like nothing that I've had before. And so high iodine milk is what you want for health. And this can be used to drink a couple glasses at night, every night, in order to build up, iodine stores. Or you can just do like a 3 or 4 day cure where you drink nothing but that milk for 3 days and you recharge everything, and you buy like 7 or 8 liters or whatever it is. So that's another way. But in general, this is an easier way to do it. This animal active form of iodine is much more assimilatable than all of these other supplements you're going to find, and it's powerful. So these 5 basics right there, okay? As far as chicken goes, I would definitely try to do a chicken at least twice a month minimum, and eat the skin and eat the livers, eat everything you can associated with it. Go dig in there and find all the different areas and eat all of it. Don't just eat the white breast or whatever it is. And so these chickens can be found by ordering online, soy-free, corn-free hens that you can find through farms and have them sent to you. Store them in the freezer and have a couple a month, okay? It's only about $50 plus the shipping, and you could probably pick up your eggs there at the same time too. So just this little, almost you could say, well, we didn't talk much about weight loss, but this is weight loss. Weight loss is 80% food. So if you're able to get these food choices made and start pining out that world there, carving it out into your life, then you'll see that over time, weight loss will become almost a no-brainer with your daily activity and whatever you're doing. It'll start to sit in. So you need to sink in. So you need to like get these levels of this. This is where we should have been concentrating all of our energy, not on all these fad regimes and diets and stuff like that. So think about it. I mean, if you eat 3 times a day, that's, you find that everywhere. That's fine. I eat 3 times a day. I actually sleep better when I eat later. So there's a lot of, ideas, false ideas about how we're supposed to do this, that, and the other that don't work for me. They may work for some. But so give it a shot. If you're more of a vegetarian, then you definitely have to find this milk. And maybe some fermented beet juice for the blood, made yourself as well, and then you'll probably have to also find these eggs, because you're going to be using this a lot to overcome things, and so you'll need it more than someone who's using the animal products, but it's still possible. I would definitely recommend supplements in these cases, or probably both cases, at least to begin, which would be a vitamin K2 from, I call it the threefold remedy. And so it's vitamin K2, emu oil. It's a non-refined emu oil from a brand called Walkabout. You buy the oil itself, not capsules, and you take a little teaspoon every day. And then cod liver oil, fermented only, which they don't sell online as much. You can find it online, but it's not something you find in stores. These fermented sacred foods, I call them. And then I would take a half to a whole teaspoon there daily to get started and run through those. And then the magnesium. So I would take the transdermal magnesium, Zechstein Inside brand from our site, theheartoftradition.com. This is like one of the master supplements. That's what I call it, because it does so much in the body. You have to have magnesium levels optimized, and they can't be optimized through pills. We have to use our ancestors' wisdom and go through the skin as they did with the Greek and Roman bath culture. So we're coming back to that. It's only $3 a week. Do it right. Get it in glass bottles. Make sure it has the logo on it, or it's not coming from the only and unique source in Holland. It's coming from other areas that are pretending to be Zechstein, because most of the products, 95% on the American market, are fake Zechstein products coming from Asia that are solvent extracted, and they've lost their chelation powers because of that. So get the right stuff, get it going. And once you get moving along, then we can go further. Maybe I'll do another podcast on some tricks you can use once you have these things in place, because your body needs you to keep moving and keep changing. And sometimes what works for a few years, you have to turn up in a different way 3 or 4 years down the road, and that's okay. All right, so come check us out at theheartoftradition.com.